Good evening, everybody, and welcome to District 71 webinar. It's how to support club officers in the pathways. This evening presenting will be Tanya Barad. Tanya is from Division E in Birmingham in the United Kingdom. My name is Gerard Mannix. I'm Program Quality Director in the District 71. Now, all this has been stimulated from the point of view of that. My slide is not going now. Yes, that's good. All this has been originated from the fact that if we see on this screen here, these are the adoption rates of pathways being taken up by our members. We see the left-hand side of this panel is the region. We're in region 10, which is the main part of Europe, and there are 8 districts in our region. Now we are District 71, and District 71 has 62% members adopted to pathways. Of our new members, 50% of those are adopted, and of our officers, 77.34%. We just take our situation here in that we're unfortunately in the lowest part of this region. We take the average overall of the region, and for members it is 68.9%, whereas we are 62, 59%, and we are 50, 83%, and we are 73. So does that concern us greatly? From the point of view that there are many different factors that come into account, our geographical distribution, maybe our age distribution, etc. So that as such, these still don't stop us from going right ahead with regard to promoting, supporting our members to come on board with pathways. Now, we had district officer training just under 2 weeks ago, so I brought up the situation that what do we do about this? And the best conclusion that came out was to support the club officers. Back in 2019, I reached out to division directors and searching for people who would be, we say, champions of Toastmasters. Now, with regard to finding any reply from that, it didn't really make any inroads. So supporting the club officers came out from our district training. My suggestions with regard to supporting club officers, I would suggest to clubs, have a special committee meeting to focus on pathways. Let it be on the agenda, just a pathways committee meeting. From that, discuss and find out and search those members who are pathways friendly. Like, in other words, it's easy to know in any club who is thriving in the pathway system. And then to encourage them to leadership or to the mentor role. This is part of a Toastmaster journey, is to actually improve our leadership qualities also. So with regard to then coming to identify those who are not on pathways, these need to be met on a one-to-one basis, I would suggest, to explore the situation, why they are not on pathways. And it is necessary to offer support in whatever way is required. It may be people have a fear of change, they might be shy about technology, there could be any reasons. So that as such, from there where we go ahead and hear what Tanya has to say, and I thank you all for taking the time this evening to be with us on this webinar call, and it really shows your dedication and interest on your behalf to be here with us. Now, Tanya is a very experienced person on the pathways. She has been a pathways guide and pathways ambassador. She has done already quite a number of webinars, and I've heard her give a workshop also on pathways, and we're very, very pleased to hand over to Tanya now. Tanya, if you're ready to take it away, please.
Thank you for that really nice introduction. Might have bigged me up a little bit too much. Can everybody see my screen at the moment?
Yes, I can.
Okay, brilliant. So Pathways has been in place now for quite a while, and I know just from my own experience, we've been talking about it in Toastmasters for about 3 to 4 years. So what I've decided to do tonight is not look at the standard things on Pathways saying this is how you use base camps or these are the different paths you can choose, but instead to look at how as club officers you can support your members. And with this, what I want to do is go a little bit through change management, talk specifically about how change management occurs with Pathways, and then what can you as a club officer do for your members. I think that the part where we are in Pathways at the moment is all of the eager members have joined on. You got that sort of 50-60% of people who think yay Pathways, let's get on board, but it's those remaining 40 members who are resistant to change and do need that one-on-one support, as Gerard mentioned. So looking at change management, the first thing that pops into people's head is people just don't like change. Inherently, people would rather do the same thing they've always done. There's a few reasons for this. Either they like what they're currently doing, they know how to do it, it's a routine, it's a habit, and they can feel that a change is forced on them. And these are some of the comments that I have heard about Pathways over the years. I think it is really important to remember with Pathways that this was beta tested with like hundreds of thousands of people. It's just that Toastmasters has that many members. They didn't beta test it with absolutely everybody. There is a lack of understanding sometimes around Pathways, and this can make people very resistant. If they don't know what is going on or how to do it, then they don't want to do it. Or it might be that they're feeling they have a loss of experience. So if you've got a member who's been in Pathways for 10 years, so been in Toastmasters for 10 years, and suddenly they feel like a member with a month's experience has more experience than them, it can be quite demoralising. And also a loss of control. Again, if they don't know what they're doing, if they don't know how to do things, they might just feel that everything's happening really fast around them, and that can make you not want to go forwards. And lastly, it's quite similar. Everything just feels different. One of the things that people love about Toastmasters is you turn up to your meeting, you know what the roles are, you get some variety in the speeches, but it's a very set, solid system for the last 90 years. Suddenly it's not the same for people, and that can be really scary. So I don't know if you guys are familiar with a change curve. This is quite a standard graph that you see in change management. And the idea is that when you introduce change to people, they go through quite a common process. They get shocked by it, and then they go into denial. So they say, no, I don't do this. I'm not going to do it. It's just not happening. Then quite often it gets forced upon them. So then they get angry. They start blaming normally management, and then they'll start blaming themselves. What will happen is as people start to get used to the change, they'll just get depressed. It's like, right, fine, I'll do it. Don't want to, or I don't know what I'm doing, but whatever, it's happened. And then eventually, normally with some good strategies, people start to accept the change. Eventually, they'll move into problem solving, which is saying, okay, the change has happened. I can see some good stuff happening. They start embracing the change, and that's really where we want to get with our members. We want to try and help them from sort of the anger or the depression that they might have around Pathways and get them enjoying it. So for new members, a lot of them are accepting this because there is no change. They don't know what the old system is. It's this historical thing that they're not given too much details about, and there really is no change for them except for becoming a member. What I'm seeing in a lot of people at the moment is this either anger and blame at generic management, not normally at a club level, but at sort of a Toastmasters international level. They're quite angry that they're being forced to change or they're going to lose their progress in their previous one, or just a bit of a depression and funk saying, I don't want to do Pathways. And they're not moving forwards, they're not moving backwards, they're just stuck in this lull. So when I started thinking about changing Toastmasters, I came to a quick realization that every single year our clubs have massive amounts of change. They have new members coming into their clubs and new personalities. The club committees change every year, the area directors change every year, And the clubs actually cope really well with this, so change shouldn't be something that is a massive struggle for our clubs. And what this leaves for us as club officers is the opportunity to develop skills as leaders to handle change. Change management is one of the hardest things that most organisations have, and they don't handle it very well. So this is a really good skill for anyone in that club officer role to really develop a whole host of skills under change management. As I said before, there's no change for new members, so all new members should come in, pick a path, and be on pathways. It's just something that they should be doing. So if we look, we know what we're doing with a change. If we look forwards at how do we help this change, how do we move forwards and provide that support for our members? The first thing you need to do is understand why there's resistance. And to do that, you basically need to talk to your members. So you go into them one-on-one and say, what is it that you're not comfortable with? Is it the IT? Is it the technology? Is it just the change in general? But specifically talk to that member. And then, as any good Toastmasters, we know you don't just have the word said at you. You need to really listen to what people say. So if somebody does open up to you and says, look, I feel like I'm not an experienced member anymore, really take on board what they're saying, and you can use that information to support them. And one of the hardest things with change, especially if you feel like you haven't been consulted in it, is that no one's listening to you. So giving somebody an ear for 5 minutes can actually really boost their confidence and let them feel like they're being supported. Then you need to tailor the advice. This is the best photograph I could find to do with tailoring, to be honest. But change management is not a one size fits all solution. If somebody says that they're struggling with IT, you don't just hand them a piece of paper and say, okay, follow the spreadsheet. Some people need to have a webinar given to them. Some people want to learn in a group. Some people will want one-on-one advice, and somebody will just want somebody to listen to them and actually say, am I doing this right? And give them a bit of validation. So once you know what is their resistance, you then need to tailor. And lastly, you emphasize what's in it for them. Pretty much anything that people say or a task that's given to them, the first thing I'll think of is what's in it for me. Go onto pathways, well, what's in it for me? Do a speech, what's in it for me? Generally, people want to get something out if they're going to put some effort into something. And I feel with pathways, maybe we haven't always emphasised actually what they're going to get out of it, other than Toastmasters International wants you to do it. So if you can find a tailored piece of advice of that specific person, what they want to get out of Toastmasters and how they can achieve that through pathways, then they start to really build upon that what's in it for them and really want to do it themselves. So looking specifically at change management in pathways, I've had a think about the common themes which I've heard people say and some advice around it. So actually, I'll start to click all of them. I'll go into each of these in details, but as club officers, you've probably heard at least one or two of these on the list. I don't want to start again. I don't want to lose my progress on this path. I don't understand pathways. I'm not good with IT. I'm not motivated. I like the old system. You won't hear people actually say I've lost face, but essentially the concept of losing face within it. And quite often you hear people say, I tried it once, it didn't work for them. And then, especially around the newer members, I don't know what path to choose. So you can start to see some of those change management themes coming out in those statements. So if we look at each one individually, if someone's saying that they don't want to start again, essentially they're scared of saying, I have lots of experience, my slate's completely wiped clean, and I'm just basically a bog standard brand new member. And that's them feeling insecure about losing their experience. So as leaders, what we need to do is set the vision for that person. Instead of just saying, yep, you go back to the beginning, you set a vision of you can go back to the beginning, but actually this is what it can look like and these are the benefits for you. So you sit down with a person, find out what is it that they want from Toastmasters. Is it that they want to practice speeches and get good at their stage presence? Because you'll get that from doing your speeches. whether or not you're on your 20th speech or your first speech, you are still practicing the skills over and over. So it doesn't really matter what number your project is. It might be that somebody wants to get leadership skills out of Pathways, so highlight the projects in Pathways which start to really build out those leadership skills. But I think if someone's just generically looking at Pathways and they're not looking at their own experience in Pathways, you can help them to really see what they want and help them guide them towards getting there. And the other thing which I say to people quite a lot of the time is that even in the old system, distinguished Toastmasters still went back to the beginning. If you've done your advanced communicator bronze, silver, gold, you suddenly go back to doing your icebreaker in the CC. So the idea of an experienced Toastmaster going all the way back to the beginning isn't anything new. We've been doing it for, well, other people have been doing it for 90 years. So it's a concept that I think just a lot of people never really saw visibility of, but it's a very strong concept that we're used to as Toastmasters. So if someone says that they don't understand Pathways, obviously you can see there's a lack of knowledge here, there's a lack of clarity, and that people are basically scared of moving forwards because they don't know how to move forwards. So as leaders, as club officers, what you can do is provide the knowledge for these people. If they're saying that they don't have the knowledge, then you can provide that for them. The first question that I would ask is, what is it that you actually don't understand? Is it Pathways or is it Basecamp? So are you having a, do you not have the knowledge of the system, of the, not the system, yeah, of the concept of how Pathways works or how the IT side of things work? Because you're looking at two very different questions there. As a club, what you can do is look to maybe provide educationals. So this has been done quite a lot, but maybe tailoring on specifically what people want to understand. And this could be a 5 to 7 minute educational in your club. It could be an area provided one. And the other thing you can do is send out slides. So I've got it. Yeah, and one of the things that I've been given actually from a local club is I've got a Google Maps sheet here, and it literally has every single speech that is available or project that's available in Pathways. It has the evaluation form, and then it says which of the different paths have this in. So if you really wanted to do a speech on, what's that one, know your sense of humour, then you can see you would have to do it in the engaging humour pathway, and you can choose to do it in the effective coaching or dynamic leadership pathway. So having that visibility can really help people to say, okay, I know what I want to get better at. That speech looks good. How do I then start going forwards? And it can really help them to set goals that way. The other thing that I personally do in my club is I've got a slide deck, and it has step by step what button to press for which bits of Pathways and Basecamp. So if somebody here finished their speech, they can click on the evaluate button and they can see that the little tick is there. And then these two activate buttons are to move on to the next speech. So when someone gets to finishing a project or starting their icebreaker, they literally have step-by-step instructions of what they want to do, and they can do it in their own time and go back and forth to it. And to be honest, I literally just WhatsApp this to new members or to anyone who's finished a speech. So it's a very simple way to get a lot of information out very quickly, and I can share those with people afterwards if they would find that useful. So struggling with IT, as Gerard alluded to, this might be a generational thing, it might be cultural, but there will always be people that aren't great with IT. Personally, the Basecamp system, I've done other training courses on it, so I do know that that platform is a really large internationally recognized platform, but it's also not the smoothest one, so people will struggle with it. Again, as a leader, you can provide the knowledge, but you can also provide the support for it. So some people just want a bit of validation. Am I doing this right? It's almost like a going to your parents saying, can you check my homework? They're looking for somebody with seniority to say, yes, you're doing it right, or do this, do that. And that's something which we can provide as club officers. What I would say is that Basecamp is being regularly updated. So as far as I know, they've made about 4 or 5 patches, and this has made it a lot easier to use, a lot easier to access future information, and more supported on different internet browsers. As a club, one thing it might be worth doing is maybe having an IT support officer. Um, even if you're good with IT, we do have quite a lot of IT systems, whether you're using Basecamp, Free Toast Host, Easy Speak. So maybe having a dedicated IT person who understands other systems and people can go to and say, you don't know what you're doing, go to Gerard. He can show you how to go through things. And it'll just take a bit of support, so a bit of pressure off the club committee to have somebody dedicated to that role. And okay, this isn't really for people who aren't IT savvy, but Pathways now works a lot better on your mobile phone. And what I do in my club is if someone asks me a Basecamp question, I can pull out my mobile phone and I can show it to them there and then without having to theoretically go through things. So again, if you've got an IT support officer, they don't have to pre-plan and bring a laptop and log onto Wi-Fi all the time. They can access it from a mobile phone, which means they've always able to give that support to people. Okay, I'm pretty sure there's at least one person in everyone's club who has heard, I'm just not motivated to do pathways. I just don't want to do it right now. I'll get onto it later. So one of the big things about leadership is motivating people. If you've got a good manager in a company who have a really motivated team of workers who really want to do their job and they enjoy doing it for them, and that really does come down to the leaders say, give them that motivation. So if somebody isn't bothered about going onto pathways, how do you help them? The first one, again, going back to it, review their personal goals. What is it that they want to get out of Toastmasters? It might be that they were not really doing speeches under the old education pathway anyway. They just want to talk along in meetings, and that is fine. But some members can do that, and that is all they want out of it. It might be that they really want to do speeches and they're just maybe afraid or they're just not too bothered about doing it now. But if you can go through and say, what do you want? When do you want to do it by? And make them have that seed of recognition to really want to move forwards and participate in pathways. So why did you join Toastmasters? What is it that you want to improve? And the other thing is, it doesn't matter if you're doing a competent communicator, if you're doing advanced leadership, advanced communicator silver, or you're doing a level 1 or 2. A speech is a speech. And I think reminding people how much things haven't changed can be really beneficial. So if someone says, I don't want to do pathways, and you say, well, you were looking at body language last year, is that still something you want to improve on? Because they would just do the speech and it will credit towards your icebreaker or your um, level 1 speech 2 or something like that. It doesn't really matter what system you're doing the speech in, you're still getting up and talking for 5 to 7 minutes, and that's what most people want to get out of Toastmasters. So I'm hearing this more and more, and I'm actually hearing this more from the VPEs who really have dug into pathways. People like the old system, and to be honest, my first remark is so do I. There are some really great things about the old education system, but there's also some things that were really bad about it and we just got used to when you accepted over 5 years. And that will be the same with pathways. In a few years' time, people will say, yep, I really like it, it's the norm. And there's some stuff they don't like about it, but that was the same before. Normally, I would say a really good technique to bonding and getting people to agree with you is to have a common disdain. You say, oh, I don't like this, and you can sort of bond over it. And what I would say is, please don't bond over how much you don't like pathways. This is happening more and more, and it's just making people not bond and motivate together, but really hating pathways. So don't say yes, oh, that IT system sucks. You can say, oh, yeah, it was bad, but now they've improved it, and try and shine the light on where the improvement in pathways is coming from. It also shows that the Toastmaster International is really listening to the members, and whilst IT development is slow, they are really trying to improve it based on what we've said. So what you can do is have a look at the old education system and say, what did you like about the CC manual? Was it that you did speeches in body language and vocal variety? And you can say, well, if you look at level 2, there's speeches there about body language and vocal variety. So actually, you get the same thing out of your level 2 or 1 and 2 than you would from Sorry, I meant level 3. You got electives in level 3 that would do body language and vocal variety, so you're not really missing out on anything there. If they say that they like doing the humour advanced manual, then there's a whole pathway dedicated to that, and you can do the electives. So what did they actually like, rather than just a generic the old system was better? What did they like, and how is it the same as pathways? And what you can also do is maybe make a common analogy. I struggled a little bit, analogies aren't my forte, but for example, everyone really liked Windows Vista. There was real pushback against Microsoft when Windows 10 came out. I know everybody can't wait to get onto Windows 10. Vista is laughed about all over the world, to be honest. And also, people used to really hate the idea of self-checkouts at supermarkets, and now it's become a very natural thing for people to do, to go up, scan an item and self-checkout. So a lot of these technology things initially have had really bad remarks. A few years down the line, people grow to love it and they actually find themselves really depending on it. Depends on the person who you speak to with that one. So what you might see, you won't hear people say, like I said earlier, I've lost face, but you might see this in somebody. And the idea here is that they just don't feel as comfortable, as confident, they don't feel as strong a person from it. So as club officers, one of the things, and especially in Toastmasters, one of the things we do is build confidence in people, and we give them a purpose as to why they're in a club. So if you've got a member who's been around for 10 years, they've got to their advanced communicator silver, they've not quite been able to get that DTM, they will probably feel very demoralized by going back to the beginning and being behind all these people who've only been around for 6 months in Toastmasters. So we need to really give them a way to build up that confidence in themselves again, that they do have the experience. So one of the things which I find really useful is drawing on their experience in other areas. Yes, they might not know in depth what a level 4 is or what an elective is in level 3, but they've still got 10 years of evaluation skills, so maybe they could do an evaluation workshop. If you really showcase the skills, the Toastmaster skills that they have learned, then they won't feel as much that they're just being pushed to the back of a club. And I think that's a really good way to support your members, give them a purpose and build up their confidence. And again, try and encourage them to be experienced. So if they're saying, oh, these newbies are coming in, then you could say, okay, well, if you do 2 or 3 speeches, you'll be at the same level of them. Do two, maybe pop up to another club because you did that all the time, and you'll actually get your level 1 before them. Some people work with a little bit of competition, and at the end of the day, they've learned most of the Toastmasters skill. It's just a tiny piece of a massive world of Toastmasters. While it feels like a lot, their normal meetings will be the same. They can still evaluate, they can still probably do grammarian in their sleep and probably pick up Toastmaster of the evening with a minute's notice. So we really need to make them recognise that. This one I covered a bit earlier. I found this quite a lot. In the first 6 months, we had our experienced members, they got a little bit of momentum, and then they tried to do pathways, and for whatever reasons, it didn't work. Sometimes it was IT based, sometimes it was just getting a little bit lost in the system. But it really put people off, saying, it doesn't work. I tried, I can't be bothered to try again. So again, we guide them, we motivate them. We want to encourage them to give it one more shot and maybe a little bit more guidance, try and understand what was wrong. So was it pathways, as in saying you weren't choosing your electives, you did a speech that actually wasn't your mandatory speech, or was it logging onto the system? And as we said, Basecamp is constantly being updated. It's a lot better in the last 6 months than it was a year ago. And I know they're planning a lot more improvements. And I think this is the last point on here. A lot of people don't know what path to choose, and then they do 2 speeches and they go, I wish I hadn't chosen this path. I want to focus more on leadership. And then sometimes I will go and spend the $20, buy another path, and have to go back to the beginning of their CC. Now, we can't drastically change Toastmasters to just switch a path, and that is something which has been recommended to Toastmasters. So I think it is on their list of things to look at. But this is drawing on the same skills as some of the other previous questions. If someone says they don't know what path to choose or they've chosen the wrong path, then as a club officer, as a leader, you can look at what is the vision of what they're trying to achieve. The pop quiz on Toastmasters International does help quite a lot, but sometimes it just takes sitting down and saying, what is it that you want to do? Is it that they're looking to start a new business and need to build their leadership skills? Is it that they need to learn how to talk to managers at work? But you can help really describe that for them and then guide them on it. Obviously, one person in the club can't do all this. Normally, it would be a VP's role to do goal setting, but if you've even if you've got more than 10 people in the club, this is really difficult. So get your mentoring support system in place and make sure that the mentors are all obviously positive on pathways or they know certain answers, and help set that goal setting with people. The other thing you can do is show the flexibility of paths. I've done presentation mastery and leadership development, sorry, dynamic leadership paths. And to be honest, there was only about 2 or 3 speeches different. Between all of the electives, you've got a mandatory speech in level 3, 4, and 5, and everything else is electives, and they cross over so much that if somebody doesn't know what path to choose, you can use the sheet I showed earlier from Leamington Spa Speakers and say, if you do this path, pretty much it covers almost anything you could want to do. So there is a lot of flexibility if with the paths. If you feel you've made a wrong choice, sit down with the person, say, what is it that you want? What's your vision for your learning? And are you going to get there on this path? Because most likely they will. Okay, so this last section is a bit more generic as a club officer, what can you do? So firstly, talk about pathways. At the moment, it's kind of like this whispered dirty thing in the corner that no one really wants to talk about, or if not, they just kind of have a moan about it. Just generically get it into your paths, like maybe in the, oh no, it's up there. Yeah, maybe in the president's welcome or different parts of a meeting. Just start name dropping it in. People become more familiar about it. Okay, I've just realised what I've done. These are the different topics that I will talk about in more detail. So yeah, in the president's address, you could turn around and say, welcome Toastmasters to the meeting. We've had a great start with pathways to the club, but we want to try and aim for 60%. Get the president talking about it and something that people are used to. Your VPs and your mentors can talk about it as well. So VP, obviously from a goal setting point of view, what path are you on? Which elective do you want to do next? But your mentors can really support in this way. And it could just be something in break time. You could turn around and say, oh, I saw this thing on Facebook about pathways, and just bring it up conversationally, get people used to saying the words. And depending on how your club works, if it's got easy speak or free toast or something, you could put up like a sticker chart or something so people can see, oh, Pierre's got to level 4, these guys have got to level 1 or 2, so that people can see what's actually happening in their club. If they see an experienced speaker who's actually quite high up the pathways chart, then they'll start to associate experienced speakers who speak really well. They're getting up their pathways chart really well. I want to be like that. Leading by example. So again, we are all leaders as club officers. So it's one of the things that people say is, I want to follow my leaders and actually be like them. So the first obvious one is do pathways yourself. If you're doing it, then others will follow you. People generally do look up to the person in the hierarchy and say, if I want to be like that person, I'll just do it how they do it. But the question is, if you are on the old education system, so I think all of the area directors and division directors in my division are on the old pathway because they're trying to get their district officer award by the end of the year. What they've started doing is saying, oh, I can't wait to start pathways. I've got to finish my last few speeches for my ACG, but I can't wait to start dynamic leadership. I've already signed up and it's really exciting and I just can't wait to do it again. So people are seeing that even if you're not actively doing it, you want to be there, and you can also be there at the same time as them. And that's actually been really positive, down to the club officers, down to the members, to see that inspiration from their leaders. We talked about pathways. I would say just generally be excited about it. If you talk about pathways and you smile, or if you talk about it and just have a bit of a bounce in your step, they'll start to see it as something exciting. If whenever you say the word pathways, you sigh or you groan, then people just automatically think it's bad before they've even heard what you've had to say about it. So just try and show your emotions positively when you speak about pathways, and it really does go a long way. So I did just cover a lot of this. Find ways to make pathways exciting. You could maybe introduce this as a table topics and say, okay, table topics, you've got 2 electives for this to do a speech. You've got this one or this one. Which one do you choose and why? You could make up some really silly table topics to get people looking into the process of it. Don't point out the issues. So what you might find is that somebody's had a negative experience and maybe 90% of a club have never noticed this issue. But if that person points it out, everyone will see the issue. So try and keep issues as something that gets resolved quickly and efficiently by your club officers and not sort of spread around the club as a rumour. And something which works really well is testimonials. We find that people do a lot of testimonials about Toastmasters, and you kind of get a preaching to the choir effect because people put up testimonials in the club for the people who've already joined and say Toastmasters is really great. And you think, okay, I know that because I've become a member. For the people that aren't on Pathways, if they can see that there is a group of people who really enjoy Pathways, it can be really powerful because we all know that word of mouth is one of the strongest ways to promote something, to encourage people. So get more of your members involved. It'll help them to see why they like Pathways, and then it will encourage the people to go on to Pathways. So realistic goal setting. If you've taken all the advice today and you've sat down with somebody, you've helped them see a vision, you've set some goals for them, you've put a plan forwards of what they want to do and why, it's really important to be realistic. If we look at the old competent communicator, um, it took on average about 3 to 4 years for people to complete this. I've seen people do it in 6 months. I've seen people take, I don't know, 20 years to complete a CC. So realistically, people used to do about 1 to 2 speeches a year. If we suddenly say to people, okay, I want you to complete level 1 and 2 this year, and you're asking them to get 7 speeches done when probably you can't fit it into your club meetings and they weren't at that rate of speech production anyway, then it's really unrealistic to expect them to really even complete a level 1 in a year. So you need to look at what they can put in from an effort point of view and a timely point of view and work around that realistically. I'm not going to go too much into it because I think probably everyone in the world knows what SMART goals are by now. But just make sure when you're supporting your members and you're setting goals for them, they are SMART. And this is probably one which you haven't seen too much. Generationally, I love Facebook, I've got to admit. But what we find is that there's a whole bunch of Facebook groups, which I'm a member of, and you get really infused with the discussions. You hear some really positive stuff, you hear some negative stuff, but people respond positively. And you get to really know the whole of Pathways very intricately. You get to gain a real knowledge, you get to know who's really good around the world with it. And the different ones which I'm a member of is there's Toastmasters International District 71. So we do get a lot of Pathways conversations, and obviously that is secluded to just our district. I mean, it's still got a good few thousand members on there. The official Toastmasters International members group, so this is from Toastmasters all over the world. God, I think there might be like 10 or 20,000 people on this group. But you get to see different approaches taken, different techniques that people use in their club. And if you've got a member and you can say, for X, Y, Z reasons, they won't go on Pathways, if you put up a question in these groups, then they really will get ideas from all over the world of what has worked. And the last one is the obvious Pathways discussion forum. This is a really great group because it focuses specifically on pathways. People don't diverge from it, and pretty much if you have a problem, somebody has posted it on Bo over the last few years, and the guys are always really supportive. So I would strongly encourage joining Facebook groups, specifically around pathways. So recognition, one of the main features of pathways was that we can get recognised more. As we said, if it was taking 3 to 4 years to do a competent communicator, you'd be putting years of your life into Toastmasters without actually really getting that recognition. So it's really important that we embrace it because we know recognition works and really share it. What I found is that if you share a level completion on the night, there's a bunch of benefits. So you're rewarding the member. They imagine they've just done their 4th speech, researching and presenting. At the end of the night, you say, Callum did this speech tonight. He's just achieved his level 1. So the member gets recognition that they've really earned something. It encourages the members to say, he's done level 1, I want to do level 1 as well. So it gets people to see that something is happening in pathways that's positive. And the other thing is it prompts the member to go into base camp. And we did have a member in my club the other day go on to level 1. And I said at the end, you've got your certificate, remember to go into base camp and complete your level. And his response was, I didn't even know I'd completed a level. So you've got that knowledge sharing of you've now done this, other members know, you know, and also go away and do your administration. And it just works on all levels, to be honest. And this is what we provide. It's literally, we print off 2 of them on an A4 piece of paper. So it's A5 size. We keep, 20 of these in our trolley at Toastmasters. And we'll just put in, congratulations to Mish for completing your level 1, your level 2, and the date that you did it. You can just print it off at home. It's not a lot of effort. And once every 6 months, you print off 5 sheets of paper. But I do think that the recognition is one of the really powerful sides of pathways that maybe isn't being focused on too much. And you were pleased to know that I'm almost at the end. So just to summarise on what I've spoken about, try and find out why people are resistant to pathways. Once you've found out, listen really carefully to what they say, tailor your advice and try to motivate that member with what you think would actually motivate them to have a change. Point out what hasn't changed. Your meetings are the same. You still get evaluations. You still get to do speeches. The actual meeting content hasn't really changed. Be excited about pathways. Talk about it. Get people used to it. And then set realistic goals. And lastly, give recognition. Let people know when somebody's really worked hard and done something really admirable. That is pretty much the end of my slides. No, sorry, that is the end of my slides. I don't think I can see any questions at the moment.
Yeah,
Oh, yeah, I can.
Thank you very much, Tanya. Brenda Lennon is in the background, who's our PR person, and she says that Elizabeth Jordan has a question. Brenda, can you set up Elizabeth to speak, please?
Elizabeth, can you unmute yourself?
Okay, can you guys see the questions that are on my screen at the moment? Because I might be able to get Elizabeth's up.
She didn't write a question, Tanya. She has her hand up. There's a question, Tanya, about the spreadsheet you mentioned earlier in the presentation. Would you be willing to share that?
Yep, I'm more than happy to share both of those sheets. I will give them to Gerard afterwards and then we can look to get those distributed.
Grant.
Thanks, Tanya.
So I've got a comment from Elizabeth Mead as well, who said that they've recorded short videos on pathways and how to use them. I'm going to assume, Elizabeth, that that is a suggestion of if we want to share them. So I will catch up with you afterwards about that.
That's great, and I would welcome Elizabeth to forward it to me also, and we could generate it to be spread, the word spread about. Yeah, everything helps. I think there's a Paul who had asked a question also. Is there Brenda?
Paul Salvage, yes. So Paul's mentioned a couple of comments essentially saying that if we haven't put this much support into it, doesn't it mean that it's too complicated a system? And should we be pushing this back to Toastmasters International? So what I would say is that I think the way that Pathways has been presented might have been quite a complicated way, and this is because a lot of information wasn't available as they were going through their IT development. There was a lot of pie charts, then a lot of graph charts, and lots of different visual ways that might have been a bit overwhelming to people. What we find, well, what I'm personally finding is that the newer members are coming in and just accepting it. It's very hard to join any group nowadays without some sort of IT system. I literally can't even go to my local yoga group without signing up online and having a list of all the different times and registering for it online. So it is quite an accepted norm for new members, and I find that they're coping quite well with this. Whilst Toastmasters International obviously does employ people and the push is coming from them, what they have done is asked all the given the tools to the district for people like myself and Gerard to provide for support for club officers. Toastmasters International as an organisation isn't large from a company point of view, and we couldn't individually coach and mentor a couple of 100,000 people. So it is being dripped down, and that is the support which I'm providing tonight. And then we're hoping to train you guys so that you can provide that for the members. So it's sort of like that inverted pyramid kind of thing.
Also, when the competent communicator and the competent leader were introduced, I believe they weren't all that accepted initially. So that at that stage in time in life, there wasn't as much IT to record the success of the adoption rate. You know, that the leadership part of it was definitely objected to for quite a long time. And I even remember in my own lifetime that very rarely people brought their leadership manual to be fulfilled at a meeting, you know, so that was always sort of a struggle of recognition.
Mm. Paul might want to add to his written question. And Paul, you're unmuted.
Good evening, Paul.
I think maybe his mic isn't working.
He's
Hello?
unmuted from this side. Paul, we can hear you.
Oh, that's good. Thank you very much.
Hi, Paul.
Sorry,
Good evening.
what my issue is, and thank you very much for trying to answer it, is that there seems to be a lot of complexity around the Pathways program, and it's good of you to do this show and to say what we should do about it. The thing is that it would be a lot easier if TMI would just simplify the process and make it easier to grasp. And then we wouldn't need to, because I think if lots of members come to you, we'd overwhelm you. And there seems to be a flaw in the actual program. The program's intentions are first class, I have no issue with that. But when I was looking at it, after I'd finished my Competent Communicators Guide, I looked at it and I thought, wow, where do I start with this? And then we're supposed to encourage members to take this thing up. And that was my issue. It would have been easier if you'd have been, say, 2 or 3 different pathways, and then they could have branched out into other things. And I'm just, my suggestion was really that we should push Toastmasters to maybe just review the thing to see if we could make it simpler, perhaps fewer pathways, just to get people started. Thank you.
I think,
Okay.
Yeah, I think there's a couple of points in there. One is it's really hard to understand from Toastmasters International point of view what is wanted across such a broad spectrum of people. I think there was quite a strong push initially for get more paths out, get more paths out. So then they provided an extra path or two. And I think a lot of this comes down to probably the beta trials that they did do. I know that involved lots and lots of people, and the feedback they were getting, or the way they developed pathways, was based on the feedback they got in the beta test. Now, depending who that beta test group was, if it was, say, how to say this nice, if it's a bunch of Americans who maybe have a different culture, pathways, the actual base camp IT technology is something which is, I think, more used over in America. All of the training courses I've done on that particular platform have been American training courses. So I think there might be a big thing of they're used to that particular platform. They don't struggle with it. It's quite new in England and Ireland. And they have taken on a lot of the suggestions that we're doing. It's just that sort of level of change to change an IT system does take time. And there have been a very common theme that has gone along a lot of the Facebook groups. And if you join them, you'll see that there's a lot of a similar suggestion. And from my own personal experience, I fed a lot back to Toastmasters in those evaluation forms after you do each speech. So I think what I would say to everyone is if you do use Basecamp, when you finish a speech, you put some evaluation suggestions into that evaluation form. Toastmasters do read those forms and they can say, was this speech appropriate for your club? No, because I found it really hard to choose this, or that's your opportunity as a member to give your feedback back to Toastmasters.
Yes, and also with regard to that, in our own district, actually, quite a number of members are involved in all 11 paths. They're all taken up. 235 have level 1 achieved since July the 1st of this year. And like that could go along all the other different levels, and they're all participating in all paths, actually. I would agree with Paul's point. It's almost overwhelming, and that's the word he used, that there are so many paths and so many things to choose from to a certain degree. Which, you know, I think they went for broke when they started out with regard to this. Let's make it as developed as possible, because if there's a growing type of thing, then there's only a little seed and a little more and a little more advancing. Whereas when the Competent Communicator and the leadership came out, it all came out as one packet also.
Yeah. And I think that's one of the things, if you've got club officers who do understand pathways, normally your VPE, just because they're working with so many different people, it's finding a way to get what has seemed quite a complicated system and making it quite simple. And one of the things that I'll say to people is, you know, take the Toastmasters International pop quiz, have a look at the paths. It will suggest 3, and worst case scenario, come to myself. We can have a look and say, what do you actually want to achieve, and which path would be appropriate. Some people will come up and say, I just want to be a better speaker. Presentation mastery is a pretty obvious one for that, or I want to be a better leader. So dynamic leadership's quite an obvious one, and that's why those paths are so strongly taken. And pretty simply, if you can get them to choose a path and then say, okay, now you just do a speech. They do that one speech, I will now support you with completing that speech in Basecamp. And that's what about those smart, realistic goals. If you just take a new member and say, do level 1, they'll be overwhelmed. If you say, just choose a path tonight and the next meeting we'll review it. Okay, now go and read the icebreaker and book your speech in. And then you take it literally one step at a time and take it into bite-sized nuggets for your members. That's how, as officers, we can support.
Thank
Have
you.
you anything else to say on that, Paul? Yeah.
Yeah, thank you very much. It's not that I disagree with the objective of pathways. I really want to see it work, and I appreciate the efforts that you're making to make it succeed. So thank you for that.
You're very welcome. The one language that is spoken also, that can be spoken about, is that it will be the only method that will be there after the 1st of July this year, you know, so that there won't be the previous type. One thing that you mentioned there, actually, Tanya, and that's actually to listen to the member, you know, how that's so important for the officer. Because in my club and in a couple of clubs I have visited, There are a number of members there who haven't done a speech for quite a couple of years. They may have their CC and they never went any further. They may have had other advanced rewards also, but they enjoy the social aspect of it, the companionship, camaraderie. They're very happy to do roles. They'll be topics master or toastmaster, sergeant at arms, whatever is required. You know, so that's a part of our structure, and you respect to that also, that we need to keep in mind. You know, that we're not forced with regard to pathways that everybody has to be there. You know.
Yeah, no, I do completely agree with that. There are different types of members, and this is why you really need to listen and then tailor. One of the questions that I don't know how to say your name, Ines. Sorry, one of the questions that somebody's asked is around essentially pushing people if they've got no great ambition to have recognition. Not everyone joins Toastmasters to become a professional speaker or even to ever earn an award. Some people just come for socialness, or there's a whole host of reasons. So if you turn around to people and say, okay, if you do 4 speeches, you can get a level 1, you'll get recognized, and they say that means nothing to me, then you're going to lose that person's interest. For example, another way that you could look at them is saying, okay, do you ever want to do contests, or because you'd need a level 2 for that, or do you just want to get up and practice your speaking? It doesn't have to be about the levels. Your icebreaker doesn't really have to be themed in any way. You can just do a generic 4 to 6 minute speech and tailor it to them. And I think that's probably what your question was about.
Yeah, it is the word that you use there is very nice. You know, the way they tailor the advice with regard to it, because like even that pathways is going to be the vehicle or the norm in the near future. But I think it cannot be forced on people, because as you mentioned throughout your slides, the people resist change. They have a fear about IT, you know, and they might have done their DTM and feel that they're at the top of the ladder, and why bother, you know?
We've got a question from Tom, who's asked about training videos. Yeah, a lot of the ones on YouTube are very American. I will give you that, and it can be for some harder watching sometimes. I don't think we've got any D71 specific step-by-steps. I've got the PowerPoint slides, which are step-by-step. It's not video. You could probably put it on a timer if you wanted. But somebody else in the questions has said that they've got some sort of small videos to go through each of the different steps. So we'll get those distributed.
There's also good information about pathways on District 4.
I do like District 4.
Yeah, they're good.
If anyone needs to find District 4 Toastmasters, if you literally type into Google D4TM, it will come up with millions of things that District 4 do. And they've got an amazing one at looking at your paths, what projects are involved and what each of those projects would involve, as in a 40-minute speech or creating a blog or something like that.
There's a question from Ian Jones who says, change is not an issue. Now it's new members struggling with Basecamp and don't understand why it's complicated. I think you may have covered that, Tanya.
Yeah, as I said, when I send out my PowerPoint slides, it shows you the quickest routes to do stuff. Sometimes I find that the buttons don't take you to an obvious place on Basecamp. Again, like I said, I think for a different audience, like an American audience, it is something they're more used to. The other thing I would say is if members are getting confused, ask them if they've ever done online training, because pretty much everyone at work has had to do GDPR trainings about in the last year or two, and I've seen some really horrific training sites for this, and sometimes they make Basecamp look really good, to be honest. So try to get it before, try to speak to the person, say, have you ever used these sites before? And when they say yes, I use this one, it sucks, maybe it can make Basecamp look really good compared to other sites. Can you see any other questions, Brenda? Can I speak? It looks like that's all of the questions that I can see.
Yeah.
Pretty much all.
Yeah. What I might ask is, does a Friday night suit people? Because we would tend to focus in on another aspect of supporting the club officers at another occasion. Is Friday night a good one?
I think everyone's going to be on mute, so you wouldn't be able to hear their answers.
Maybe if the members who are on the call can type in yes or no
Yeah.
into the question panel.
Or they could send it into D71. You know, there's an address at the on logging into the webinar.
There'll be
Yeah,
an
we've got
opportunity to give feedback tomorrow. An email will come.
Yeah. Okay. And
this is recorded as well, isn't it? People can watch it at a later date.
Yes.
where will they find it, Brenda? That was a question I was just going to ask. Where will they find it?
It'll be put up on YouTube channel over the next few days.
That's
The
great.
District 71 YouTube channel.
Okay.
I'm getting feedback from people to say Ian Jones wants to speak. Just hold on a sec. General feedback is that Friday evenings are good.
That's great. Yeah.
I think one of the suggestions is a little bit earlier in the evening. I guess if you've got younger kids, I think kids go to sleep this time of night or something.
Okay. Ian, I've unmuted you. You may be muted yourself.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes,
Yes.
we can. Thank you, Ian.
Yeah, yeah, you raised my question. So thank you for the presentation, Tanya. And it's probably relevant 12 months ago, but things have moved on. So I don't think change is such an issue now. What it is that new members start and they get the impression they're doing speeches, not realizing they've got to do online work as well. And that's what they're struggling with.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of ways you can support new members. You can either make a standardized welcome pack, which I know maybe has committee member names, people to go to, an instruction of what to do. I've got a WhatsApp group for my club, so every couple of weeks to months, especially as we get new members, I'll just drop my files on the WhatsApp group, and everyone's got a copy of the PowerPoint slides on their phone. They can stick it on the computer, and I'm just sort of constantly churning out the information. And like I said, at the end of a meeting, we'll say, you've completed your level 1, please remember to go onto base camp. It's just that sort of people knowing they have to do it, and that's sort of the knowledge which we can share as leaders.
What we're struggling with is, you say about leaders, you know, show them and leading by example. Even leaders like myself are learning pathways as we go along. And you start off at level 1 and you can't see what is level 5.
They have
So
actually opened that in the last couple of months. You can go into any of the levels now. So if you're on level 1, you can go into level 5 and open up all the projects. And that's one of the big changes, which has been really helpful.
You can, but you can't see the path ahead of you. When you say ask for members' goals, they don't know what the path is. It's not clear. Are you with me?
Okay. No, yeah, I do agree.
You go level 1, you can see the first tree. What you can't see is the path ahead. In level 5, this is the route through.
No, I do agree with that. The D4TM website has been something that's been really helpful for myself. The slides which I've got from SPA speakers do sort of point out one elective, one mandatory, 2 electives. Now that you can see forwards in the levels, you can go forwards to level 4 and see it does say mandatory speech, and then it does say electives. And it will say, you know, please choose 2 out of 4 something. What I generally find is that it's very similar to the competent leadership. The CL manual was really complicated, to be honest, but then people got used to that. To do my CL4, I need to do timekeeper and 1 out of 3 electives essentially, and people just got used to that. Most VPEs, they'll know that. I know to do level 10, you can either do a club contest or do Toastmaster and general evaluator, and people will get used to that with Basecamp. I mean, I already know off the top of my head, level 3 is 1 mandatory, 2 electives, and that knowledge will gain with time, just as we have previously with other manuals.
Yeah. I mean, what's happening in our club the last 12 months, the members have left that don't like it. So the new members, they don't know any difference. And it's the way forward.
do you know what they don't like about it? It's one of those, if someone's going to leave, they're probably not really going to speak to you, but I guess if you can get
No,
that
I think with
understanding of what it was.
yeah, we've lost members because of pathways, but you know, you gain members all the time, so change is not an issue for us now. It's just
Okay.
navigating Basecamp, that's the issue.
I mean,
Thank
if
you
you have
anyway.
like an IT person who is good at it, they could maybe bring their laptop to the meeting every, I don't know, for a couple of months, so maybe 5 or 6 meetings, and then maybe they could either do educationals or have like IT corner for 20 minutes afterwards, where they just sit in the corner showing people stuff. You kind of got that social osmosis, which just does take a bit of time. And I think from a club officer point of view, it's what can you do to keep people's motivations and keep them optimistic whilst they're doing this learning?
Yes, yeah. I know it's the way forward. It just seems complicated. That's what we're struggling with.
Yeah. I think it's the only thing I can really say is it's very good practice for if you ever work in a company which goes through a restructure or something. They always have very bad politics involved, and Pathways actually isn't as bad as a lot of social restructures I've seen, but it's good practice for the outside world. It's the most positive way I can say it.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Thanks.
I suppose, folks, it's just gone past 9. It's 6 minutes past 9. And I thank all those who attended the webinar, and we'll be back again in a couple of weeks with another aspect of it for club officers. To Brenda in the background, thank you as a PR person for setting up this, Brenda, and for your efficiency. Also, a sincere thank you to Tanya for presenting such an excellent presentation and slides, etc. You still excelled yourself there at that. So to everybody, I say good night and thank you.
Thank you, Gerard. How do I turn that off? Gerard, do you need me to do anything with the questions or anything like that? Brenda, are you still there?
Yes, Tanya.
Do I need to do anything with sort of questions, or I'm guessing if they've gone, I can't answer it now, can I?
Just hold on a sec, Tanya. Tanya, are you still on?
I am, yep.
Hi, Tanya. I think I was answering questions as we went, and then you answered them as well. So I think you're good. I think there was a question about the spreadsheet you mentioned, and there was also a document that you mentioned that you sent to your WhatsApp group. Is that the same thing?
No, so there's 2 separate ones. One is looking at projects, looking at which path to choose, and one is for how to use Basecamp. I've also got one for how to use Basecamp Manager. So they're very obvious, like here's a screen, press this bright red button. So they're about as foolproof as possible, really.
Okay.
So I can send them over to yourself and Gerard in about 10 minutes.
Grand. I think Gerard might be gone.
Yeah,
Gerald,
I
are you
noticed
there?
he's gone.
No, he's gone. Okay. Sorry, the reason I asked you to hold on was that there were a few people still on the call.
Yeah, I thought so. I didn't know how to get your attention to just you. It didn't seem too
Yeah.
possible.
No, I dismissed a few people, which I hate doing, but
Oh,
some
they've
people
got
can be
life.
slow in going off the call.
I'm normally a bit too quick. I'm just like, cancel, gone.
Yeah, that's it exactly. There'd be Ian, or one of the people who asked the question got a little bit upset that the comment that we thought there were no questions, but he didn't really give us a chance to look through the list of people, and that's why I called him in.
Yeah, no, that's fine. I noticed some of your answers where you said to people, "Are you happy with us sharing?" I don't even know how to say that lady's name or that person's name. I've only used this system once, so I'm sort of going through, and it looks like everything was answered.
Yeah,
Some of these don't even
I
make
think.
sense.
Yeah, no, I think you're good, Tanya. Well done.
Thank you.
Great presentation. Some great ideas.
It's just stuff that's worked around, especially after club officer training I had last Saturday. I got a lot of extra tips and tricks. It's just a different approach rather than the same message we've been giving out for 4 years now.
Yeah.
So, well,
Good on
I
you.
will leave you to your evening and let you enjoy it. So I'll see you soon, hopefully.
Yeah, take care of yourself, Tanya. And your
You
mum was
too.
on too. I'm sure you
She
saw.
was. Yeah, I'm going to call her in a sec and get some feedback.
All right, okay. Listen, mind yourself, and thanks again, Tanya.
You too. Bye bye.
Right, take care. Bye.